So you have pulled for Trigger, the hot blind sniper lady, and I've tried a lot of Trigger teams in the media server in the first phase of the patch because we don't really have access to Orphe yet. So I'll go through the new teams first and then head straight into the old ones that you can still run today. And I'm going to cover teams that are easy to use but you can sweat and mid-max if you want to. So let's start with the barefooted waifu with her robot father, Seed. So the first team I'm showcasing is a Billy Trigger Seed team. With this team, I think Trigger's role is just simply starting the battle to fill up her purge bar and watching her do work while you smack the enemies and just swapping to her whenever her EX skill is available or defensive assisting with her, which is pretty much her gameplay. You're pretty much on fielding Seed and swapping to Billy whenever you want to EX skill with him and doing like poke damage and building up decibel so that you can ult in the stun phase with him. And when you reach to that point, start off with Seed's enhanced basic and then maybe EX skill or ult with Billy, chaining to Seed, going back to Billy after that, ulting with Seed, and pretty much ending the stun phase with Trigger's ult to get a good head start on the stun bar. Pretty straightforward team and my favorite out of the bunch. The next one is a pretty similar team to the previous one for those who lost the 50-50 and gotten adopted by the one and only Nekomiya. I'm just going to briefly explain this team because it's the same thing you do with the other previous teams or just Seed's team in general. Fill up the purge bar on Trigger, on field with Seed, EX skill with Nekomiya, EX skill with Trigger if you see the opportunity to do so, and ult on the stun phase by ulting early, which isn't really bad. It's up to you. You can just do the usual chain rotation with enhanced basic to EX skill or ult with Nekomiya and chain to Seed, chain back to Neko, and maybe finish the chain with Trigger or cancel it to ult with Seed and ult with Trigger after that. This seems an F2P plus version of the Billy team. Next up is Trigger, Seed, and Harumasa, a shockingly good team. So basically the team is on fielding with Seed for the majority of the gameplay, obviously setting up triggers like Purge first and swapping to Seed and then EX killing with Harumasa and dash attacking with him so that you can do damage and build up decibels for him to ult in the stun phase. So in the video showcase, everything isn't really perfectly executed but we still managed to squeeze in a lot of damage on the first stun phase. Always starting with Seed's enhanced basic attack, quick swapping to Harumasa's EX skill, chaining to Seed, and the long pause is just me freaking contemplating if I can actually squeeze in Harumasa's ult in there, and I barely missed out on the damage there from his ult and then ulting with Trigger, and even with like that wonky rotation I managed to get like 40k on this lol. And now for Yishuan teams. So with these teams, I think you get a lot of value putting Trigger in like a Yishuan Astra or a Pan Wu team if you have Trigger's M1 and Signature Wenjin, which is not player friendly for the wallet. And you're really losing out on Trigger's stunning capabilities since her additional ability won't really be activated if you're running M0R0. So if you have the criteria of like having M1 and then her Signature Wenjin, these are the two solid teams. In the background, I have like Trigger at M0R1 and I still managed to get like a 3-star on Deadly Assault even with like poopy gameplay and Trigger being handicapped. It is an easy and comfy team to play with Yishuan with Trigger, but you can probably put like Polkra, Astra, Jifufu instead of Trigger and it will be probably a bit better, but it's still an option if you still want to run it. Now on to the next bunch of teams. The SAnby comes with Trigger currently being SAnby's best support and news saying SAnby's gonna get a buff in the future, W for SAnby mains. So let's start with a somewhat free-to-play plus premium team, and that is Nicole, Trigger, and SAnby. This team is straightforward like ongo-bongoing, basic attack spamming with SAnby, and EX skill dashing with SAnby if you have 3 marks on the enemy, which is basically the bulk of her damage. So we're fighting the complex robot spider here. Out of stun rotation is just breaking their legs so that we can get loads of damage and fill up the daze bar quickly, while squeezing in Nicole's black hole for the defense shred to speed up the process of like stubbing this guy's toes. Then on the stun rotation, if you have marks on the boss, consume it with SAnby's and then chain to Nicole, chain back to SAnby and just electrocute the boss's balls with SAnby's Cure EX skill, dash 3 times, refresh the death shred, and then ult with SAnby, dash 3 times, and by the time you can probably ult with Trigger for a good build up on that daze. pretty good team, you're basically just playing SAnby 90% of the time. Next up is a steroid version of the F2P Plus premium team. You just replace Nicole with Astra. So Trigger, SAnby, and Astra, now you're really just basically unga-bungaing with SAnby in this team. It's just 90% like Anby on the field while Trigger doing like a 360 no-scope on the boss, and then the other one freaking Astra singing in the background playing the boss's theme that SAnby requested. This team doesn't really need a long explanation since you're just basically basic attack spamming with SAnby and occasionally swapping to Trigger to EX skill and then swapping to Astra to just proc like a lot of quick assist for infinite uptime on the Astral Voice. The stunning rotation is probably like a double chain attack with SAnby so that you can get more stacks on the enemy to consistently proc your 3 dashes on the enemy. Basically EX skill, 3 dashes, ult, 3 dashes again. If you have Astral's ult, why not maybe use another chain with SAnby and pretty much ending it with Trigger's ult at the end of the combo. Lastly, for the SAnby team, there is Trigger, Caesar, and SAnby, and a very comfy team that is basically giving SAnby interrupt resistance from Caesar's shield, our Moe Queen. In this day and age of ZZZ, I don't really see Caesar being used a lot, but she's still pretty good because of like the 1k attack from her shield and anti-interruption, and she acts like a pseudo stunner, and this for really the casual player who just doesn't really want to bother with like getting interrupted and just wants like a comfy gameplay. Basically, the team rotation here is just like SAnby basic attacking, defensive assisting with Caesar or Trigger so that you can proc the Protopunk's passive, giving the team 15% damage bonus. And pretty much repeat the basic attacking and defensive assisting. When you're in the stun phase, you basically do the normal chain attacks of your characters, or maybe you can chain twice with SAnby and blow your load onto the boss by EX skilling and ulting with SAnby. Second to the last, which is an anomaly team comp with Yanagi, Trigger, Yuzuha, or maybe Vivian, or maybe Miyabi. Most probably like Miyabi since she's probably the most common S rank because she's just broken. But I wanted to give the spotlight to the mother of section 6, Yanagi, since Miyabi gets all the spotlight every time. Also note that the Yanagi I have right now is like M2, I don't know why. It was like already like this when I received the account, so I guess it is what it is. I had to use it. So with this team, I'm basically running Yanagi as an on-fielder, Trigger, and Yuzuha. Setting up the Trigger first to give the damage amplifier and going to Yuzuha to apply her buffs, debuffs to the enemy by increasing our attack, anomaly build-up, increasing in anomaly and disorder damage, and damage increase. Pretty much going Unga Bunga style with a little bit of adrenaline rush with Yunagi's switch stance parry attacks. And since we are fighting an electric weak enemy, the boss is just stun locked and they can't really do anything because of the perpetual shock procs I'm doing with like Yanagi and Trigger and Yuzuha. And we're doing pretty good disorder damage here. The stun rotation isn't really important as long as you fill the anomaly gauge with electric attacks, it should be fine. And spamming Yanagi's ult and EX skill on it on the stun phase as much as possible for big disorder procs. It's a pretty good team. You can run it if you want to on-field Yanagi and like make her your main DPS. Last but not least, Trigger, Lycon, and Hugo. If you don't have Lighter, Trigger is a decent option to Lighter, albeit Lighter's really bumps up Hugo's damage, but not all of us have Lighter though. So pretty much the goal of this team is to just stun the enemy as quick as possible to do nuke damage with Hugo. You set up Trigger's Purge Gauge on field and on-field Lycon, basic attacking and EX skilling while defensive assisting with Trigger and swapping back and forth between these two. Make sure you don't swap onto Hugo since it will proc the Hormones Punk's like 4-piece buff and you will lose out on damage. So when the boss is stunned, it's time for Hugo to shine and do 1 million damage in an instant, which tickles that hormone called dopamine in your brain. You can also do the double chaining with Hugo just to do an additional a bit of damage. But yeah, that's the last team. There are probably more options since Trigger can be slotted as long as you have an attacker or the same element as her. There's like Korin and Anton, you can make it work with those A ranks as well, but it shows how versatile Trigger is on any attacker or electric teams. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Sub so I can stay in the basement, leave a like for the algo, and leave down the comments below if you are getting Trigger or maybe her M1 or signature engine just to make her powerful and increase her longevity for your account. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye!